So one of my favorite ways to use screw and solidify is to basically create a sci wall. So with this cube, I'm just going to tap it to edit mode, press M, and we're going to merge this into a single vertice. And looking at this in top view, we're just going to extrude this out, extrude a couple of angles, like so. Nothing really specific to it, just creating something interesting. We can press Q, bevel, and it will add a 2D bevel. We could even press 2 in order to ensure that our profile is reset to 0.5, giving us a more rounded result. From here, we can press Q, go under add modifier, and choose a screw. However, this time I'm going to press tab, and instead of pressing 4 to turn this into an extrude, we can just go in and click on angle and type in 0. And we want to actually screw this out, but we want to change the axis. So by rolling over to axis, we can choose what axis that we're actually screwing this out. And while looking at this in face orientation mode, we see that some of our geometry didn't actually make the way it's supposed to go as far as its normal orientation. So by clicking on the button for flip normals, we see that that doesn't do anything, but shift clicking it will turn on normal calculation as specified in the tooltip. So now we're able to get something a little bit more adequate. And for our segments, let's actually lower this down to something like 3, because we don't need that many segments going up and down on this. And to see what our segments look like, we can press Alt V and look at wireframe, but just from doing this thing over and over, I remember that segments should definitely not be 36. So from here, we can press Q, and let's add a solidify. So we could use solidify the quick way, where we press 1 to solidify this way, 2 to solidify on both ways, 3 to solidify on the opposite way. In this case, we actually want 2. And we could just click and apply without actually even bringing up the expanded UI. In fact, most of the times you'll see me working on more than likely won't be needing the .ui. However, it is there for you in the event that you need to get more specific with your parameters. So even if you don't see me using it personally, doesn't mean that it's just not a good thing or something. It just means that, you know, I'm just more prone to the fast UI way of working, where I actually work through all of these hotkeys that I personally requested and get to my intended result. But our goal with the .ui is definitely to reduce the amount of hotkey overhead and have a UI based experience to allow people to get where they want to get to, even if they don't understand or know all the hotkeys that are required to use an operation to its fullest. So by clicking, we can just complete this, and from here, let's just control click bevel to add a bevel, and alt click sharpen in order to put a weighted normal. And from here, we can just use Boxcutter and just perform some cuts. We'll press B, press X, and now we've made that into a slice. And let's draw another one without any sense of if we're correct or not. So maybe jump into orthographic view, press S and X, press B to bevel, and move this precisely where we need it, and we're good to go. So with this piece selected, we can bring back this piece in the center. We can press A to add that to the visibility, select both of these pieces to add them to visibility, and from there we can begin making some transformations. So from here, we could press Q, choose array, and we see that array is actually able to use the relative system instead of with constant, which can be toggled via a hotkey, which we can press H and look at that. But we will also be needing to add it to our .ui as something that will need to be done. In fact, we see that that's already been done, and I'm not even going to attempt my luck by changing this over to constant, because we'll actually change the intended result. But just letting you know that we also added support for array to be able to support multiple objects by jumping between relative and constant. So from here, we'll just click to apply and select both of these, and we'll just press S, X to scale them out in order to encompass the back area as well. And we also see that a little bit of movement might be required. So let's go back in here, make some adjustments just to ensure that we're not catching a bevel on a double wedge. In fact, we see that the bevel needs to be a little bit more stringent in order to handle this shading. So instead of moving it, let's just jump into bevel, alt scroll the wheel in order to bring the bevel angle down where it actually catches this. And we could do the same for this piece as well, because it could use the help. And just like that, we've created this little screw wall with 2 windows in it. So we'll just select both of them, control click blank material, and give them each a unique material. And I'm just going to select this piece, press Q, enter ever scroll, bring it back, and also perform a bool shift on this. And with our bool shift, we now have this piece brought back as a solid. We can press Alt M, and just click on shift in order to make this a glass material. And we see that there's a little bit of Z fighting happening with the border, so sometimes I actually don't like that to happen, even though I know it doesn't show up in the renders. But Z fighting is Z fighting. You should get rid of it everywhere that you see it. So from here we'll just click on displace, and we'll roll the wheel backwards once in order to jump to angle, and we can actually go in and adjust that out. Alternatively, we could have went inside of displays tab to go into the .ui, rolled this backwards to jump to normal because we have the same behavior in there, and then just shift drag this parameter to move it on a fine axis or a fine amount in order to get us to this intended result. So we jump over to the render, we see what we get. This piece is too light, new blank material. The second piece it gave us, also too light. Also, all these pieces it's given us just seemed like they were light all at the same time. But just like that, we were able to just quickly create a quick Sci Wall, and most of the Sci Wall is still non-destructive, meaning that I can press Alt W, jump over to Hops tool, and grab the screw and continue moving things if I want to make it taller or slimmer, or whatever I want to do with it, and then press Alt V, B in order to scroll some lights in here. But we see that we probably don't have scene lights on, which is why the result isn't actually showing up whenever we're scrolling through all of our different setups, because I know that each of these setups is vastly more different than the last. So not seeing it show up as a result in view is definitely something to catch my eye. But just wanted to do a quick demo just showing a little bit about how I use Screw and Solidify when it comes to making sci-fi walls, just in case you're wondering. The other thing that you might be wondering is why we're adding these to some of the less prominent modifiers, and it's because, you know, we always work our way up towards adding these things towards our more crucial systems. For example, when you hear that .ui is on bevel, I feel that that will be a pretty big event. However, you know, we got to make sure that things are just right for us to go in and begin touching the progenitor of all of the modals inside of HardOps. So it's definitely something we're working towards, but we wanted to at least continue moving the .ui forward this update to a couple of more modals. I forgot that in the original one, I did a couple of maneuvers with the box cut where after I did a couple of slices, I would just cut some verticals down each of these panels just to add a little more visual interest to it. So let's at least do that to see what our final result would have looked like with a little bit of extra detailing. And so far so good. We can press D, switch over to box, and with box press W in order to turn this into a wedge and perform some wedge cuts. Nothing like wedge cuts to add additional detail to an area. We can press V in order to array. However, we want to reduce the amount to maybe 1. Jump over to the next area, cut in some wedges, and wedges are just a good time all around. So you know, it's my go-to way to add detail around boundaries. Also keep in mind that wedge is an operator inside of HardOps that you can use as well, located under your mesh tools. But using it with cutters inside of Boxcutter just feels a lot more organic, so can't recommend it enough. So just cutting our details in, we want to just work this area just slightly because it only takes seconds to really get this looking cool. And now let's turn off visualization and take a look at what we have, and that's a much better wall than what I left off on. My apologies about before.